I'm Mike Todd with ASCAP, and I'm incredibly thrilled to introduce to you two world-class talents from the ASCAP family. The Oscar, Emmy, three-time Grammy Award-winning composer, and now add director and producer to that, Michael Giacchino, along with four-time Grammy Award-winning multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, arranger, and producer, Jacob Collier. We're bringing these two together to talk about music and storytelling. Michael and Jacob are both amazing storytellers through music, each in his own way, and they have new self-released albums out that really show that. Oh, and I should say they have another thing in common, Henry Mancini. Michael was ASCAP's most recent Henry Mancini Award winner, and of Jacob's 2 Grammys this year was for his innovative arrangement of the Mancini song, Moon River. So I'll start off with a question for Michael, then get out of your way. I know you two have plenty to talk about. Michael, you just released your first ever non-soundtrack album, Travelogue Volume 1. What's the story behind it, and what inspired you to make it?
Okay, well, honestly, look, what happened was, I was about to start working on all these movies. I was about to start working on The Batman. I was about to start working on Jurassic World. And all of a sudden, COVID hits. Nobody's going anywhere. Productions everywhere are slowly shutting down all over the place, and everyone is told just stay home. And so my first response was, I thought, I'm going to, what do I do? What do I do with myself? I don't know what to do with myself. So I was like, all right, I'll start working on the music for Jurassic World right now. I'll just start writing the themes that I know I'm going to have to get into, and I'll start working on the themes for continue doing things for Batman. And about a week into that, as we're starting to get a real picture of what was going on in the world, I said to myself, I was like, what am I doing? I was like, if I'm going to be like stuck at home for weeks on end, not knowing at that time that we'd be here, 8 months later, I said, I'm going to do a few things that I've always wanted to do, but never had the time to do because my life was just movie after movie after movie. And I said, I'm going to write that album that I've always wanted to do. So I had this idea for an album that was in the vein of, I love the old records of Arthur Lyman and Martin Denny, Esquivel, all of these amazing people that I listened to growing up. We had these records in the house, and I thought I want to do that. But I also love Star Trek. I also love Twilight Zone. I love an old radio play called X-1. I listen to a lot of old radio plays. So I thought, well, maybe I can combine all that together and tell a story in a concept album. They don't really make concept albums anymore because people just cherry pick their music, and I want to talk to you about that. Actually, Jacob, I have questions for you about that whole side of music. But that's how it started for me, was just that, that realization that I actually had time on my hands to do something for me, to do something personal. Normally I'm, fulfilling something that belongs to the world, but this was a chance to do that. So that's how it all got going.
So cool. Michael, it's super inspiring to hear you talk. And before we get started, just thank you for the wealth of inspiration you've given me for literally my entire life. You've been the wallpaper to so many dreams and so many fantasy worlds and so many important hideaways. And I can't thank you enough. And Travelogue Volume 1 is insanely good. It's deeply, deeply inspiring. And I'm curious, I guess, about your process of working on such an epic thing from a remote place. Because I'd imagine that you've got a ton of experience working with people in the real world, taking an orchestra into a studio, getting musicians in and sort of saying, like, guys, this is how it goes, what we're going to do. And I feel like, musicians the world over, myself included, we've had to solve problems about how to interact with people from this strange distance on this wacky old thing called Zoom in a way that's energizing and fulfilling and communicate stuff. But somehow this latest album of yours, this debut paving stone in the world of things that you've created kind of for yourself, as yourself, it's so cohesive. And I'm just curious how you achieved that cohesion without being in the room.
I wasn't sure how we were going to do it at first because, as you said, everything I do is about getting everyone in the room at the same time and doing it all at once. Rarely ever do I track the projects I work on, because I love the energy and the creativity that comes out of a bunch of talented musicians being together in the same room, and that inspiration being bounced around, and you can't really emulate that by tracking everything and separating everything. So I thought, I'm going to have to figure out some other way to do it. And of course, Zoom and all of this, but I didn't want to like sit on Zoom with like my incredible bass player, Abe Laboriel, and say, okay, now Abe, we're going to, so what I did was I wrote everything out, and then I added, and then we made charts for everyone. So I would send them a demo of what I did. I did a mock-up, of what the piece was, and sent them the mock-up and sent them a chart and just said, have at it. Just have at it at your own pace, at your own time. And we set up a series of drop boxes, and every musician, and there was maybe 10 of them, not including the string section, which we did do in Australia. And they would each get their charts, and they would record at home. They would take, and then all of a sudden they would start showing up in the Dropbox. It'd be like Christmas, and I'd be like, oh, there's the piano part. Let's see it. And what was great is, they'll do it as written, and then you'll get a pass where they're just kind of doing as written plus adding on, and then you'll get another pass where they're just like doing whatever they want on
going off the rails. Yeah.
And it was just this incredibly luxurious sort of wealth of options to have.
That's crazy. I mean, that's
wonderful. And look, and the guys that I've been working with, look, we've worked with each other like almost 20 years now. Some of them, so we know each other very well. And one of the things that I was so worried about was that it wouldn't sound like everyone sort of was playing together and off of each other. And as I started listening to the music coming in, I started remembering that, oh yeah, we've been doing this for like almost 20 years together. We know each other, and we almost don't even need to be in the same room together in order to make it feel like we're doing this together.
Yeah,
that's
have that
how well
synergy.
we know each other.
That's crazy. I mean, I guess you do it enough times, and it feels like second nature to make music together. But I don't. It's a miraculously kind of vibey album for everyone having done their own thing in their own space at their own time.
Yeah,
but it's spectacular. It's interesting. I guess I've been making music on my own for a lot of my life. In fact, I can show you my room. Look, here you go.
Yeah,
that's
look at
the
that.
aerial camera. And I've been in this room literally for 26 years because I've always lived in this. I'm in my family home. My solution to the kind of working remotely thing has been to try and do as much as I can on my own. So I'm not particularly a master at any of these instruments, but I'll have a go at the bass and the piano and the drums, and I'll sing lots of different things. And so I've kind of invested a lot of time into being my own orchestra. And the interesting thing I think about the last couple of years is I've been moving out of that space into a more collaborative space.
And how's that been for you? What was the first thing that you sort of felt like, you know what, I'm going to reach out to the world or whoever and pull someone in to do something with? How did that go?
I released this album called In My Room, which was recorded in this exact chair, in fact, and that was all done myself. So I did the mixing and the production, and I did all the arranging and the instruments and stuff, and I then toured. I sort of toured all over the world with this one-man show, and it was really, really fun, especially at the beginning, to be in the middle of this sort of 10 musical instruments, running around like a mad chicken, sort of layering things up and all that. And then I think towards the end, I just got this feeling that, man, I missed that, the sensation of just having a jam, thinking like, what's going to happen? I don't know. It's outside my control, rather than I know I've got exactly 4 measures to do this, then I've got 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 to do percussion, So I was feeling that live it would be good to play with other musicians, and then I embarked upon this great big quadruple project, which I'm currently still working on, even though it's taking longer than I had planned because of COVID and other things. But Jesse at DJESSE is this massive conglomerate. It's a huge kind of 50-song collaborative project, and for me, in some ways, it's almost like an inversion of your process in a funny way, in the sense that I've only ever really done things for myself and with myself, in a sense, my study, my experimentation, my learning, and I wanted to kind of rip up my own rule book that I'd spent all this time making, and just get out there and get some other people's DNA on my skin and in my face. So I went out and volume 1 is all orchestral. I did this orchestration and the arranging, and it was a huge learning curve. I'm most certain that parts of your musical DNA ended up on that album because you were so formative for me. But that was super cool. And obviously 60 musicians is very different from 1. So that process was fascinating. And then with volume 2, it spread out into these other, sort of folk-based collaborators and songwriters and stuff like that. And this year I dropped volume 3, which is a totally different set of people. So it's hip hop and R&B and soul and rappers and trappers, but then there's folk fiddlers and rock guitarists and sort of you name it. So I wanted to dunk myself in the deepest possible waters of music as a huge language. And obviously the COVID situation hit. I'm back in this chair again. Yep. But I think there's something quite peaceful about that, I suppose, about taking a process that you've been expanding and kind of refining the priorities that drive it, I suppose.
There is. And I think there's something about making yourself vulnerable to the forces that are outside of your control. And that really is what happens when you start to collaborate with people, and because there's all kinds of ideas that come through. And, my favorite moments of those are when you get these surprises, you get these incredible surprises, and I refer to them as gifts from the players. They're these gifts that they give you, things that you never, ever would have thought to do yourself, and in some cases they're so good, I want to kick myself going, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I think? But that's the joy of working with other talented people and sharing and then collaborating and seeing how this thing grows. There's a benefit to also being alone as well, because like you, most of my work is done here by myself in this room, and it's just me messing around, as you were saying, with all the stuff. And but I love that moment when I get in, onto a scoring stage, or in this case, opening a Dropbox file, and where you're not really sure what you're going to get. You don't know, and for you, when your music is also incredibly intricate in terms of, I want to say it's orchestrated, and it is orchestrated, but it's a different definition for the word orchestration, because you're doing so much work to the audio, to the you're expanding things, you're contracting things, you're adding other sounds, you're doing all of these insane things, and to me that's just another form of orchestration, which I love. Everyone cool. is so used to orchestration being, because they hear the word, literally the word orchestra is in the name,
Yeah, right.
But the thing a lot of people don't realize is orchestration goes well beyond all of that. And when I listened to all of your music, I was like amazed at the orchestration that was involved.
Thanks so much for saying that. I mean, I think to me, and I'm sure that you'd agree, I think orchestration is basically just kind of flavor management, isn't it? It's like, how do I get the most color out of these combination of things? Let me get the recipe right, the balance right,
Yep.
And I think about it a lot, and all these different axes that you can work with. There's thickness and thinness, and loud and quiet, and far away and close to you, and obviously you've got high and low, and then you've got all the sort of subtler things like momentum and gravity and things like this. But I've always been very interested in sort of having my hands in all those different pies and just trying to smell them and understand them and sort of figure out how to speak their language. But I did want to ask you, just from the perspective of someone who is a little younger than you and earlier on in the game, when you set out on this crazy adventure that you've had over the last several decades, really, did you foresee what you mentioned before as this kind of conglomerate of faithful people that you wanted to work with, that you knew you'd be coming to again and again to deliver in the way that you love them for delivering? Or is that something that happened by accident?
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of wish fulfillment, because and it happens slowly over time. And I remember the first time it happened to me. I was scoring this film and trying to figure out who was going to engineer it, because I didn't really know any engineers in town. And someone I was working with mentioned somebody, his name was Danny Wallen. They said, what about Danny Wallen? I'm like, wait a minute. Danny, I know that name. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, wait, Danny recorded like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He recorded, King Kong from the 70s. He recorded like this laundry list. He recorded almost everything Elmer Bernstein ever wrote.
Crazy.
It's this incredible laundry list of people that he has worked with. And my first response was, why would he work with me? Like, oh, look, he's done that, And here he was at the time, I guess he was in his 80s. And I met with him and he's like, sure, I'd be happy to do this. It sounds like fun. And, and he recorded The Incredibles.
Insane.
And so that was one person that, you have your heroes growing up and you have all these people that you admire, and you don't even have to grow up with them. There's people out in the world that I didn't necessarily grow up with, but I look at and go, oh my God, I'm so impressed and so inspired by what they do. And your first thought is always like, I'll never work with that person. Why would I get to work with? There's no reason for, there would be no reason for it. But then it slowly starts to happen. And then there's this process of, for me anyways, I always felt like, oh, I'm a fraud next to these people. I don't deserve to be working next to people that are this good, And so I just dedicate myself to learn whatever I could from them at every step of the way. And that goes from engineers to musicians to copyists to orchestrators to everyone up and down the chain. So
I love that.
It's just something you find over time, and you don't almost realize it until you look back and go, holy cow, how did that happen? How did I find myself interweaving my artistic life with all of these people who I admire immensely? I think you just gotta love what you do so much, and be so pure about what you're doing, and have no other reason for working on something than the fact that you want to work on it, or you want to work with a certain group of people. There has to be that honesty and that love for what you're after. If you're in it for money, forget it. It's never gonna,
do something else.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. There's a lot of other easier ways to make money.
Yeah, no, I completely and utterly agree. It's just so cool that you've arrived in a position where you can make, a bunch of phone calls from lockdown, and you get this like brilliant, cohesive feeling that feels like a family making music together. And that's, I think that's a testament not just to the musician that you are, but actually to the person that you are too.
That's
the relationships you've built with all these different people. They've obviously been deeply consolidated, and you can really hear it, I think.
Well, thanks. I have always been very careful trying to work with people that I love and respect. There may be someone who's incredibly talented out there, but that's not the kind of person you may love or respect.
Yeah.
I steer clear of that, and I try to keep myself aligned with people whom I'd be happy to have at my house for dinner, whom I'd be like hang out one night with. And, it has to work on that sort of family level for me, or else it's very hard for me to dedicate the time and the energy that is needed to make these things. How hard it is. It's like, it's okay. So the record, I got the actual copy of the record today. This is the first.
Whoa, big moment.
And I thought, I was looking at it, and part of it was just like, when I looked at it, I was just looking at, it's really a representation of my relationships and my friendships with people. It truly is. Like, you can look on that thing, and almost everyone on there is someone that I have a history with. And it was pretty powerful just looking at it from that point of view.
Wow.
And not even thinking of the music, but realizing like how friendships can evolve into these incredibly creative endeavors. It's strange.
It's special. And all the trust, there's an individual trust bond with every person, from you to every person that you.
Yep. And you're building all of that with people. You're in the midst of building all of that right now. So you must have a lot already. And then you'll just be adding to that more and more. And then at some point you're going to look back and go, what happened? How did this happen?
How did I accrue this list?
Exactly.
It's amazing. Honestly, I can't wait till we can get sort of back into the wild of the world. It feels like a very tame way of being a musician when you're all sort of neutered into yourself like this. But
yeah, it is.
Hopefully soon enough we'll be back out and we'll be rampaging and having those interactions that really forge those lasting relationships. That's and
the dream,
help those stories be told. I think we're all craving it right now, big time.
I love the fact that you're out there doing things live, and I've done live concerts, but they're always related to film scores and things like that. So to be able to bring something like this to the world in a live performance, to me, would be something very different, something I would love to do. So hopefully
that's
epic. Where we go.
It'll be completely epic. And it's funny because I'm such an introvert, really. I'm used to my own space and I work in that way, but I miss touring so much now.
Yeah.
And I think I learned how to do that live thing just simply by doing it enough times, and it wakes your mind up to the fact that you can you can see the people that you think about that must
Right.
be there in the world, but they're actually there in front of you. To me, that there's nothing like that. And
I
yeah,
agree.
if you'd said 5 years ago, like, oh yeah, you'll be touring, and I would have said, I'm not sure about that, but I miss it, and I'm excited to get back to it.
And that
And I'm
connection
excited to
with
hopefully,
people.
I'm excited to hopefully hang out in person someday. And
I would love
I'd
that.
love to properly hang
Let's do
and
that.
talk more things music. But this has been such a joy and a pleasure. So thank you very much.
Oh, please, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much. I want to talk even more about, I do want to get into one thing before we say goodbye, real quick.
Let's do
I
it.
just want to understand, talk to me, and you may have already done this a million times, but I haven't heard it. So I just want to know, like, in terms of the Moon River arrangement, where did you start on that? And do you write things out, or or is it just sort of, I'm just going to improv this line, then I'll add on to that? Like, how do you organize that?
Well, I used to write all my arrangements out on paper, and I'm not the best at manuscript paper. I didn't learn from reading music. I didn't really have teachers growing up in that way. So I found it was a good exercise, but I lost a lot of time. And so I kind of, I transitioned to this more improvisational approach where I'll sketch out a basic shape. Moon River, I knew there'd be 4 basic verses, and I knew the tone of each one. First one is humming, and it's underneath the surface, and it's warm, and there's some moments of flavor, and the 4th verse is up, into a microtonal key, and everything. All the stops are out and stuff. So I kind of knew that was the basic structure, and then I just started singing, and I sang, and I followed my ear, and I would sing something, and then I'd respond to the thing I sang, I'd respond to that thing, and then I'd remove the first thing anyway because it didn't even need that, and you sort of start building out. But some of the most important moments were sketched out, but using MIDI. I would say, okay, I kind of want to go here, I kind of want to go here, and I'll sprinkle things and stuff. And then often with the planning process, it's more about capturing a feeling than it is capturing the notes.
Right.
If I want something to be cascading or pyramid like or royal or whatever, I'll play that feeling in, and it will be there. And I think, well, I can't sing, but I can sing. I know what I meant. And so when I get going, I tend to just go. And I mean, Moon River, I was about a week from start to finish. And I came in this room and just shut the door. And I thought, I've always wanted to arrange this song. I think it's the time. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll start in B flat and I'll see where I end up,
And just the costume changes alone. Because I kept thinking, wait, how many different shirts did you have to wear?
So, yeah, it's that funny moment where, my mom wakes up the next day and finds 20 shirts in the laundry, and it's like, oh, Jacob must have been filming an a cappella video today.
I love it. Well, I listened to it several times. I listened to it once with my son too, and he said, now this is the kind of a cappella I live for. He said,
Wow, that's beautiful.
So, yeah,
Please thank him for me. That's a lovely thing to hear.
It's and we must get together in person as soon as
we must.
The world allows. I would love that.
Yes, please. Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jacob. Good luck with everything. Stay safe and be well. And let's hope in a year you and I are sitting together in this studio doing something.
I cannot wait for that moment. That is going to be so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.